Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Life with Jamie and More. And I really hope actually you enjoyed the previous episode about inclusion. There were some really interesting comments which came through about that. And if you haven't listened, jump back and have a listen to it. But today, I'm really excited because I actually have my first guest. And I've just been waiting for this moment for a while, actually, since I've kicked off this whole podcast gig. And so I would like to introduce Tommy to the podcast. Tommy, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm very good, mate. I'm very good. And like I say, I am very excited to have you here talking about your experience with things that have gone on for you. So the kind of full confession here, of course, we have actually talked about a few things before, Tommy, haven't we? We've had these conversations before, and I think that that's actually been very useful in allowing us to work out where we want to go with this, because these are personal things we are talking about here. They are personal stories, and I'm really mindful about that. And of course, everyone really does have very different stories and experiences along the way. So those who are watching on YouTube actually have a little bit of a special scene to see. It looks like we're in a cafe, so feel free to jump over to YouTube and see actually what we look like in our little cafe setting. I don't know what I've got in front of me here. It looks like a what is that thing? It looks
like a croissant or something like that on a cup of coffee.
All right. Okay. So, Tommy, can you tell us a bit about you and your story?
Yeah. So I am the very proud father of a special needs son. His name is John. John is 17 years old, and we have been through a very long journey with John, filled with ups and downs. John was born almost 6 weeks early. He was 3 pounds 5 ounces, and spent the first 98 days in the NICU and kind of start our journey. But John was diagnosed when he was about 8 years old with a very, very rare genetic syndrome, which is called Odo syndrome, which is spelled OHDO. And John is, he's cognitively delayed. So probably the average, that you would, try to put on John is probably around, in different areas, probably 3 to 4 years old. And the current outlook is he will not progress, much beyond that. John, is nonverbal, which, as anybody can imagine, is a huge challenge. When your child can't, verbally, speak to you. And so John here recently, over the last couple of years, has learned to be able to walk a little bit without assistance. He doesn't have the greatest balance, so someone has to be there close by. But he is a very, very happy young man. He's in his last year of high school, and he will be graduating very soon. But he, will, just because of his, current condition and everything, we'll be taking care of him the rest of our lives, as me and my wife, as long as we're physically able to take care of him. And then, at some point, he'll need to go into, some sort of facility that could help take care of him. So, but again, he's a very, very happy young man. He wakes up, almost every day with a smile. And he loves people, right? He loves seeing different people, come into his life and everything like that. And so yeah, very, very proud to be his dad.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tommy. Thanks for that, man. It's a great introduction there for everyone to kind of hear this story about John and you and your kind of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think actually interesting, I just want to kind of talk about one point just there straight away, which is actually, of course, his nonverbal side, because that is a huge thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a challenge because I have part of that experience with Jamie, and that's really challenging for me because it is it's frustrating because we expect it in a way. We do expect someone to kind of, like, if we ask a question, we kind of want to have that response from our children, right? So it's a real challenge for me, and I'm interested to hear kind of for you, like how you have moved through that situation and that experience of having a nonverbal son.
Yeah, it's I can be honest and say that, it's frustrating, for your child not to be able to tell you that he's got a stomach ache, or he comes home from school, for him not to be able to tell you, how his day, was. And so now, while he's nonverbal, John does know how to give hugs and everything like that. And so a lot of times when I'm getting him home from school, and I'm getting him out of his we call it his wheelchair, but kind of stroller, and I'm asking him how his day is, and he stands up and he gives me the biggest hug, right? And so that is kind of a little bit of a compensation, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's definitely it's frustrating. It's challenging, for him not to be able to tell us. And some of the things that, when we're looking for him when he's ill, or is he hungry, is we look at his body language, right? And that tells us a lot. And he has learned here over the last couple of years. He knows where within our home we feed him. So when it starts getting close to dinner time, he'll make his way, to that chair, and I'm ready to be fed, right? So, it's I guess I could sum it up and just say it's frustrating and it's challenging not being able to hear your son be able to tell you, hey, Dad, I had a great day, or hey, my stomach hurts, or hey, can we go do this, right?
Absolutely.
We're now, one of the things, we have a very, very beloved pediatrician that has been with us, throughout this journey. And she told us very, very early on, when we knew, John was nonverbal at that point, and we didn't, see him being able to speak later, is she says, always speak to John like he is verbal, right?
Oh, that's interesting, right?
And we have maintained that, and we have always talked to John, and we've never just not asked him, right? We hold those conversations with him. And there are certain times where we'll ask John, hey, John, do you want some ice cream? And he'll get a big old smile on his face. So there are a few things that he can understand and everything. But yeah, it's frustrating,
It is. It's frustrating, and it's also like, and you kind of, I guess, like me, I've kind of had to find ways to try and navigate this, right? To kind of get through those situations where you're just like, what is he really trying to tell me here? Because, and I think you raise a really interesting point there, which is if he's not well, if he's feeling sick, he's feeling unwell, if he's got pain, because that's huge. Because like when we have that, we're able to communicate that across, and relatively straightforward, we can do that. But children, like John and like Jamie, they have to kind of do it in different ways. Like Jamie does, he certainly does let us know now when he's in pain. Like he will absolutely let rip. So, but I won't necessarily know where, right? So it's like, okay, so like what's going on? And because he'll just throw a massive fit. Generally, like if something hurts him, he'll start either biting his hand. He'll hit his head, or he'll just go and headbutt whoever's nearest, right, which is either me or my wife, right, or even bite. He'll just kind of latch on and bite. So there's, and that's kind of how he communicates, because it's just like, you know, when he's when he has pain or severe discomfort, or even noises, actually.
Yeah.
So it is a challenge. It is absolutely a real challenge, isn't it? The nonverbal side, and it's a continuous learning process, I think, isn't it? It's a never-ending process.
No, it's never ending, and it's something that for us, we know that he more than likely John will never be able to speak and everything, and my wife and I, we've often asked ourselves if there's any thing that John doesn't do today, which one would we want, right? If we could have a genie and somebody comes and grants us a wish, right? And it's we've kind of debated amongst ourselves and everything, but being able to speak, it wasn't necessarily on the top of our list, because he can give us hugs and stuff like that. There's other things, just kind of basic hygiene things that, kind of rank a little bit higher up on the list, but being able to speak it's in the top three.
It absolutely is. I can fully appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, Tommy, let's go back a little bit in a way. Let's go back to when did acceptance and reality of this start and kick in for you?
So it was probably around when John was about 3. There's all of these different milestones, that a typical child goes through, and we started noticing, by the time that he was 3, there was many, that he wasn't making those different milestones and what have you. And we kind of knew then that, John's not going to catch up, because the first couple of years, that's, was our game plan is John just needs to catch up. Let's give him all of the different, training and things that we can do for him to try to catch up. We'll get him into various therapies and what have you, and we'll get him caught up. And, maybe he'll be just a year behind or 2 years behind. But around age 3, we started saying, okay, this is going to be, our new norm, right? And that was about when, we had to, accept that, okay, we are parents of a special needs child, and we're going to be on a different path, than, a lot of our friends, because we have several different, couples, close friends, and we all had children kind of around the same, time. And, we were watching their kids, do all these different things, and John was not doing those things, and was okay. We're just going to be on a little bit of a different path, than they are, but it is what it is, and we're going to make the most of it, right? That was kind of, we did not, try to, we did not try to say, that this isn't fair. We didn't ask for this. You can't go trade your child in for a new model, right? We said, all right, we're going to give John all the love, the attention, and, help that we can give him. And it is what it is, and so that was kind of our outlook that we had.
Did, like, when around that, like you say, around 3 years, and you mentioned before that, of course, he only really got his diagnosis when he was 8.
Yeah.
So that's quite a few years later, right? So we kind of may come back to that, or maybe let's talk about that now, because it's a big difference. You got 3 years and 8 years, so you got all those years in between to wonder, like, what is what has
Yeah,
John got? Like, how do I really begin to understand that?
right. Right. So the doctors, had a diagnosis of, it was just kind of like a label, it was PDD-NOS, which stood for pervasive developmental delay, not otherwise specified, which he's got developmental delay. We don't know what caused it. It
Mm,
is what it is, right? And so we wanted to, continue. John was our first child, and at that point we were like, okay, we'd like to have more children, but we'd like to understand what if caused this, and is there what's the likelihood of that happening again.
mm,
So we followed up with the geneticist, and we were probably seeing him, at least once per year, and they would run some tests and what have you. And each year we ran the test, and as medical technology is constantly advancing, and so each year we were hoping to hear something back, and each year we wouldn't hear something back. So we went that 5 year span, and one day the geneticist called my wife and says, "Hey, I think we found something," and because we told them that, look, we've been running these tests, and they said, well, let's go ahead and do this whole genome sequencing, right? So it
mm,
sounds fancy,
mm,
and so we ran that, and the geneticist called my wife and says, I think we have something, but I want to run one more other test. And so my wife asked him, so, well, what do you suspect it is? And he said, there's this very rare, syndrome. It's called Odo syndrome, OHDO. And but I need to run one more test to confirm it. So as you know, what do most people do these days when the doctor tells them, well, here's your symptoms, and your diagnosis, you
yeah,
go to Google, right?
yeah.
And so that's the first thing that we did, and we found that it's super rare. The frequency is 1 in 100,000 to 1 in 1 million births.
Mm,
Child will end up with this syndrome, and so the other thing that we did is we went on to Facebook and searched there, and we found a support group. And as soon as we found that support group, we knew without a doubt that was what John had,
mm,
because part of the syndrome is some very distinctive facial features. And there were a couple of kids on there that looked like they could be a twin of John, right? They just looked
mm,
exactly the same. And so that's, and then when they ran that follow-up test, it confirmed it. And so, okay, we got our label. And the other thing that we did learn from that is that this was just a genetic mutation that occurred. It was nothing that me or my wife, passed down to John. And
mm,
that was relief for us, right? Because
mm,
we, at some point thought that we did something wrong,
mm.
and it was, and it was coming from us, but it just happened, right?
Yeah.
And so,
So
but
it kind of
yeah,
it took a bit of a weight off then, didn't it? I
yeah,
guess because you were like, okay, because I can very much relate to this right here because it is you're like, okay, it's not from me. Essentially it's not from me. It's not I'm not to blame for this, right? This is just how it's happened.
yeah,
And that's like it's for me that happened probably um I think it was about I think how old it was maybe my wife's going to kill me on this. I think it was probably like 4 or 5, maybe it might have been younger than this.
yeah,
So we like, but up until that point, like, actually no, it would have been no, it would have been less than that. Sorry, yeah, she's absolutely going to kill me. It was like when he was that was before we had our second son. So
mhm,
because that was kind of a factor into what we were going to do
yeah,
if and when we were going to have another child, right?
right,
Because it was like, well, there were two things going on for us. It was like, okay, is that going to like should it matter?
Yeah.
That was the first thing. Like, should it matter? Should we just have a kid anyway, right? Because we are pretty crazy anyway,
Yeah.
and it's just how we roll. Or should we just, wait for that kind of gene sequencing to see where it's all at? But obviously, because for you, it was more about the diagnosis, wasn't it?
Right.
And so
yeah, it was. And then, after we got the diagnosis and knew that it was neither the cause of Joanna or me, and then we kind of, started asking ourselves, okay, well, do we want to have, attempt to, have another child? And, I remember Joanna asking me that. And at that point, we're 9 years into, parents with special needs. And I'm like, okay, I was struggling with, okay, how can we have another child? And, we're giving so much, attention and love and focus and hard work and trying to do everything that we do for John. How can we have another child and not give as much attention to John, right? And I really struggled with that. And, we ultimately decided, that, John is, our hands are full with him. And, so we did not, have kids, further after that. But yeah.
That's a tough. Those are one of the tough decisions to make, isn't it, Dorian?
Yeah.
Because like you're like, okay, we could, or we're choosing not to, and it's like, and I can really kind of empathize with that, because it's like, where do we go with this? And it's such a tough call, because you're like, for me it was also like, have I got enough kind of energy to kind of like potentially go through this again?
Yeah.
That was kind of like something that was at the back of, well, not the back of, it was in front of my mind. Like, it was like, have I got enough energy to even entertain the idea of having a child, two Down syndrome children? And I was just like, and then that's when we decided to get all the gene sequencing done and work out kind of where it all kind of came from. So yeah, it's a never a lightly kind of taken thing, is it? So what, like, as his caregiver, obviously, you share that role with your wife. Have you, as his dad, ever felt that you've never had the right kind of tools to kind of deal with, like, the situations that you come across through his life so far?
I feel that we are very fortunate, to have, we live in a major metropolitan area in the States, and we have access to a phenomenal medical facility, medical center. And we have absolutely, enjoyed all of John's medical staff and everything. They've just gone, bent over backwards to help us with John. And, for 10 years, John had a trach, and he, at night he would sleep, connected to a ventilator. So we had all kinds of supplies, and we even had, private duty nursing, that would watch over him during the night and everything. So I feel, very fortunate that we have all of that available to us, and good, insurance through my employer. And so, and then also, kind of, if you will, internet savvy, and just being able to go out and search on the web. And the other thing that, I made use, of, through the early years was getting connected with other, families with special needs kids, because all of us, some are going to be a few years ahead of the other, and some a few years back. And we've always found that the special needs community is very, very small, and we are always, can pick up the phone, and I know I can call some friends that we met in the NICU and say, hey, what did you do in this situation, right? And, it goes without saying, we can always text, anytime, whether it's during the week or the weekend, and we're always there for one another. And, I know that probably there's a lot of people out there that, are not as fortunate, and hopefully this podcast, can start to reach, some of those people, and let them know that, there are, social media groups, and there's podcasts and stuff like that to help them, along the way. Right. And I've always, we talked about those 8 years. And so during those 8 years, I always never shied away from telling John's story and hear his, abilities and disabilities and what have you, in hopes that someone else, our child has, this syndrome. And whenever I would hear what a child had, I'd go look it up, just kind of curious, is that what John has? Right.
Oh, right. Interesting.
So I've always, been happy to tell John's story, and I still do, in hopes of helping others, out, along their journey.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually, isn't it? And I think that, as you're going to go on along, you've been trying to, learn what's going on around you, and I think it's such a it's a great thing to do. And to be honest, I was not like that, because I don't know, I was in a different mental place to that. I couldn't even, I was struggling with what I was doing and the world I was in, and I couldn't really look outside of that. I was just like, I didn't know I was struggling. And it was actually that's the fucked up thing, is I didn't know I was struggling. It was so deep inside me that I was just like, all right, I'm just going to work, and I'm just going to try and look like I've got my shit together on the outside. But actually, really deep inside is that I really just was, it was just layer upon layer of stress and anxiety and not knowing kind of what the hell was going on. And so I suppose that's kind of where I feel that there's so many guys like that. And I do see guys like that. I guess you must see this along your way as well, with people who you kind of, just bypassing and things.
I will say that, for us guys, many of the, if you will, the social media groups and the various, whether it's on social media or not, most of the special needs, support groups, they're all led by mothers, and very few, fathers lead or really take an active participation, in their child, and some of them may be doing it behind the scenes. Me and my wife, we have kind of, divided up a lot of the responsibilities, and she kind of has the lion's share. She does a lot, and I'm forever grateful and what have you. But yeah, it's typically led by, the mothers, and I'm really not sure, why that is, but I've always, tried to take an active part. Could I do more? Absolutely. Right. That, that's just, something, that I've got to, work on and what have you. But yeah.
Yeah, I hear you with that. I think there's so much right there what you said. I'd love to kind of pull that to pieces, but I think we'd have like, a 5-hour episode if we kind of really pulled that one to pieces. But about kind of the dad's role in these things, right? Because I see here in Japan, like I see, and I think I see like a very extreme version of how it plays out in a Western culture, because of how the culture is here in Japan. So the mother is like generally like the carer, like she pretty much like, and the father goes out and he does the earning, and he comes home and he just, while he interacts with his children, of course, but it's so different. So different from I'm gonna say a typical Western kind of culture in a way.
Right.
But okay, let's go on. Let's move on here. So, like, what has been for you? What's been a pivotal point in your journey as his dad, right? As John's dad, what would be that's kind of a pivotal point for you?
Yeah, the pivotal point for us, I would say, is probably when John was 10 years old. He was able to get his trait. We call it his trait, but you know.
So what actually? Can you just run through what that is actually, because people might not know what this is.
Yeah, so when John was born, after first couple of months and everything, he was not exhaling carbon dioxide because his jaw was a little recessed and his airway was not as stable, and so you've got to be able to exhale carbon dioxide, or you'll have organ damage. So having a tracheostomy is where they put a hole in your neck, kind of right at the bottom of your throat, and then they will put what's called a trach. It's a little plastic, like a little straw that goes into your airway, and then there's a hole on the outside, and that allows when you're exhaling through your lungs and what have you, then the carbon dioxide can go ahead and come out. So when he was given that, we were told that he would probably only need it for 6 months to 18 months.
When did he have that go in?
So that was probably right around 2 months of life. And
okay, so he was 2 months old, and he's had this operation where it's she's got this going into his throat here.
Yeah, so he had that at 2 months. Doctors told us, he'll grow in probably 6 months to 18 months. You'll be able to take it out and then go on your merry way. And because he had that trach, well, that there was certain type of training. Like if you had to do a CPR on your child, you're not going to do the traditional way, and through the mouth. You would have to do some other techniques with a trach and what have you. You can't get any water, in it, right? Because that would go straight into your lungs. And so he had that. And also right at the same time when they did that surgery, they gave him a feeding tube in his belly because he was a poor feeder. And so, and
you just kind of at that point in time, you're just going to be like, okay, like
yeah,
this is it. This is what we're doing. Like you don't kind of question it, like
right. We were
like,
already
this is his life, right?
Exactly right. We were already been in the NICU for 60 days and hadn't left. Haven't brought him home yet since he was born.
60 days, right? Okay.
60 days, yeah. And so we had that, and then after day 98, we left the hospital and we went home, and a month after being home, we had to travel up to the about a couple of hours away. There was let's just say a significant weather event in our area, and we had to evacuate. And the second night that we were there, on his machine that was connected up to his trach, it started telling us that he wasn't taking a breath. And so of course we tried to remain as calm as we could, right? There's no need to panic, although, there's just some excitement, right? And so we called the paramedics and all of that. And to make a long story short, we got back, home to his normal doctors and diagnosed him with central apnea, and where he was having approximately 200 events per hour, where his brain just wasn't telling his lungs take a breath. So which it was great that John had the trach and everything so that, he could be hooked up to a ventilator, that it could be configured to give him a breath and, rather than having to have some sort of face mask or what have you. So we, we would do these sleep studies and, over the course of 10 years, he had 19 different sleep studies, looking at the brain activity and over the 10 years, that 200 events per hour finally came down to an acceptable rate. And that was what was keeping the trach in so that, he could be administered, some oxygen, through there and give him, breaths that when he wouldn't take it. And so finally, when he was about 10, we got to take the trach out and that just opened up so many different things that he wasn't able to do before it. And whenever we would go somewhere, we would always have to carry some various pieces of medical equipment, like this suction machine, because he would get, secretions, within the trach, and you'd have to suck that out, extra trachs and stuff like that. Just a whole.
I've seen people do that here, and I've looked at these people, and I thought to myself, there's so much that goes on in my head when I've seen that situation, because I'm just like, how do they deal with this? Like, how do they, that's my first thought, is like, what a world that they're living in, for starters. And
if I would have seen, kind of that scenario, seen those families doing that before I had John, I'm like, I would have thought, how, just like you're saying, how in the world do they do that? But once we were placed into that situation, you just do it. You have no choice.
You have no choice, right? You're just like,
you have no choice. You
can't be like, I'm not doing that. I'm walking away now. Like, no. Like, it's like,
and so your child's life depends on it, right?
That's exactly right. And so you fall into that kind of, you're just doing it. It's like, it's no different to like, picking up a fork and eating with a fork. It's just something that you do, right? And it's like, oh, that's what he needs done. That's what I'm going to do, right? That's his health and well-being is priority right here. So, and that's what you do. And I think it's just, again, it's one of those things I always come back to. It's one of those things that, it's hard. It's an additional thing that we put onto ourselves. It is actually hard to do. It's another thing that we have to kind of balance. Another thing we have to do.
Yeah. And it doesn't take any advanced degree or specialized training or anything. It's just something that you learn and you will continue to learn as you go along, right?
Yeah.
And you will tweak the process here and there, and you will find others that are doing this, that are a similar situation, and you ask them, okay, well, what did you do in this situation, right? And you get their advice, and then you do what's right for your child, because every child is going to be different, right? And and you just that's the way we've done it, So
it's one of those balls that you juggle when you do it, right? It's just another ball thrown into, and you're like, all right, I'll juggle this one, like. Exactly. And then, but you said it came out. So it came out when he was, how old was it when it actually came out?
10 years old. And so, we had the last sleep study, the amount of apnea was at a, quote unquote acceptable level. Right. Yeah. And, look, there were many times, when he was 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm like, thinking, okay, well, now is the time. He seems,
right. You're like, I want it out now. Oh, this thing
we're
needs
ready
to come.
to go, get it out, and then we go in, we meet the doctor for the results, and it's just, just kind of like, your heart sinks, and those were very, very tough, appointment visits, but finally at 10, he was able to get it out, and So what you have to do the night before you get it out is they put a cap, on the trach, so they close up the hole, and then he has to be able to sleep an entire night, pushing air, because you have that little, I hate to try to use like a little tube. You got to breathe around that for the whole night while maintaining, certain amount of your oxygen saturation, in your blood has to maintain a certain level. So he was able to do that. And actually, a quick funny story is, we talked earlier. I mentioned that we have some phenomenal medical staff here, and so when we were scheduling him to do that final sleep, you have to do it in the hospital. There was no beds available.
Oh, no.
And they said, okay, well, we'll call you tomorrow and we'll get you scheduled. Well, then there was none the next day. And, we had been going through this for 10 years. We're so ready, right?
You're just
and
like,
there was none the third day.
Was there a part of you that's like, oh, it's just going to happen. It's just going to be the same as before. Like, it's just,
yeah. And then there was none for the fourth and fifth. And so we went actually 3 weeks. And
oh my God.
One of his doctors called and says, hey, I thought we were supposed to be, doing this procedure for John. I'm like, well, we've been waiting. And she was, this doctor was pretty high on the staff. And she told me, she says, well, look, I'm going to make a call down there. And they said, if I don't hear that they have a room for John in the next hour, I'm going to call the chief of staff for the entire hospital and make sure he gets a room. So we've had just phenomenal doctors that have always looked out for him. And so we got him a room. He slept well that night. And the next day we were able to get his trach out. And it was a great feeling and everything to get it out. And we worried a little bit after that how well he was going to sleep. And because without the trach, we did not have the nurse at night that kind of watched after him. And he never looked back. He has thrived since then. And, I think he has his best sleep, since, getting that trach out and, not being hooked up to the ventilator and this and that. And so he's really done well. So that was kind of the turning point for us, that we could go somewhere and not have to lug all this equipment. We can go take him in the swimming pool and stuff like that. Now, he still, he can't, put his head up underneath, water because, his mouth, stays open a lot. And so, but still, it was a lot easier to go ahead and take care of. And then, we would have also, some various nannies that would help us out during the day. We didn't have to have special training because he didn't have the trach anymore, right? So it just kind of opened up a whole new world for us. And so that was kind of the turning point for us is so we got the diagnosis at 8 and then the trach out at 10 and so those were big turning points for us.
Big turning point. And so kind of you were all these things. It's funny, like I'm the same. As we talk about these things, like what as events that happened in our lives, we talk about them now. And like, oh yeah, this is what happened, right? This is like, yeah, like did this, did that, like, but actually, it's funny because when you actually go, okay, that doesn't happen to so many other people, other people with kids who aren't special needs, right? And you, when they hear these situations, they just don't know. They like. How do you, the question is that they always like, how did you do it? And it's like, well, hang on, we didn't have a choice with this. This is how we literally had to just roll with it. And we didn't have time. We didn't have time to like reflect on what the hell was going on. It was just like, this is it. And this is what we're doing. It is such a challenge for us as dads, right? And as men, we're just like, okay, like, well, this is what we're gonna do. Like, this is
Well, and I think, this kind of if the male or the dad in me, we always want to be, a problem solver. We want to fix the
Mm,
problem, right?
mm,
And that was probably one of the most frustrating things because it's something that I can't fix, right? There's nothing about John's situation that I can fix, right?
mm,
So, that was frustrating, but I learned to channel that into, just the normal setup at home. It may have been something as, trying to get, the tubing to the ventilator, set up just right to where, he can roll over in bed and not get tangled up. Well, you would see, if you would laugh to see the contraption that I came up with, but I fixed the problem. He was able to turn over and not get tangled up. And so, I'm
yeah,
able to use my problem solving, skills and what have you. But yeah, that, is very frustrating because, you can't fix a situation, right?
yeah.
It is. And yeah.
And I always come back to that. It's emotionally draining. It's
Yeah.
emotionally draining and tiring for everyone, not just men. It's also tiring
Yeah.
for your wife as well, right? Because it's just there we go again. Like, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to try, modify our lives. It's about
Right.
modifying our lives, like um. So it's the mental. I bring it back to like the mental challenge that we have, because it's, while we accept it and we move forward with it, it's also something that we're like, sometimes we just gloss over, and we,
Yeah.
as guys, we just think, yeah, like
Yeah.
that's like that's it.
It's
But it's
it's exhausting, right?
mm,
Because you're constantly trying to deal with this, and it's exhausting both for me and my wife, and I'm soon, for y'all and everybody. It's exhaustive for both parents, doing, a lot of things that, you're having to do for someone that you normally wouldn't have to do for, a typical, person. And, some people, I've used the analogy before is, imagine having a 2-year-old for, taking care of for the rest of your life.
mm,
If typical kids, you have your 2 year, you go through that stage. You may have a couple other kids. Well, after 6 or 8 years of raising a couple of kids and everything, you're done,
mm,
and you move on to other challenges, right?
yeah,
But, imagine taking care of 2 or 3 year old for the rest of your life,
yeah,
and it gets to a point where you're just mentally exhausted, right?
yeah.
And, you've got to have, periods of respite and take time for yourself.
And how do you do that, Tommy? Because I think that's a really good lead into this question now, is because how do you look after yourself, right?
Yeah.
From the daily stresses of not just work, right,
Hmm.
and not just looking after John.
Yeah.
Like, you could pile these things on together. Like, how do you
Yeah.
look
So
after yourself?
I've got a great group of buddies that, that live close by, and we plan to go to, various events, and, we'll go out to eat, or we'll go to, a ball game, or something like that, just to get away,
Mm,
and, my wife does the same thing. She'll plan a girls trip, and, then, on those weekends, I'm Mr. Mom. I take care of everything, and, and we have always done that to, so we can both get away.
mm, mm.
And fortunately,
How important is that for you?
it's very
How
important. It's very important, and I would say a little less important for me because, I go to work every day, right? And, so I get to get away from the house, right? Now John is in school now, but in the summertime he's home, and so, my wife is home with him, and, but, I think, you know being able to go to work, during the week, I kind of, get away from the home. It's
mm,
still, on my mind, but I do enjoy, getting to go, hang out with my buddies and stuff like that, or, I'll just go ahead and take myself, to a ball game, right? And just to get my mind off of it.
So
And
you'll go by yourself. You'll just
I'll
you.
go by
Yeah.
myself. And
Fantastic.
sometimes that's fantastic. Some people are like, well, why would you go to a ball game by yourself? Because I'm getting that mental respite, and that mental
Yeah.
break,
Yeah.
and
And it's all about you, right? Because it's all about
it's
just,
all about me. Yeah.
sometimes you don't want to talk to anyone. You just want to do something which is just for your
Right.
own sanity, your own mental health, your own, just
Mhm.
everything about you, isn't it? It's like, okay, I don't want to talk to anyone I know. I just want to go and watch this game, and I
Yeah.
just want to focus on that game. And for that, however long the game lasts, I don't know how long a baseball game lasts. Sorry, I'm not a baseball man, so I don't know.
They last 3 hours.
3 hours. There we go.
It takes me about 45 minutes to get there. So it may take, a good, I'm away from the house for a good 5 hours,
There we go. Right.
Yeah.
And so that 5 hours is like, it's like the golden 5 hours for you, because it's just all I have to worry about. I'm kind of guessing here is that you're just like, I don't need to look at the watch. I'm just like, I don't need to kind of be anywhere. I just got to be at the game, watch the game, and focus onto me, and focus onto one thing, which is that game, right? And that I think is something that is so important. And I never did. I never did enough of. I didn't learn how to do this for, like, I'd say like over 11 years. I just didn't do it. And I think it is so important to kind of hear, for others to hear that, like, we can do this. And why there is a side of me that feels guilty when I do these kind of things, where I go and do something for myself, I feel guilty, because I'm like, okay, my wife is, looking after the kids now, and my wife doesn't drive, so she's kind of pretty much like, either she'll just stay local, which is fine, but she can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
If I'm looking after the kids, I can just pile them in the car, and I can drive to where I want to go, and I can just dump them in a park and be like, okay, let's play in the park. But my wife essentially is stuck in a city, so I do feel guilty, and I have to remind myself I can't feel guilty.
No.
Because this is so important to me, because if I don't do this, then I cannot function. I cannot operate on a level where I need to be the best I can be.
Right. Yeah. Me and my wife, we very early on, we always kind of, if you will, took turns, right? Being able to get away. And then it probably was, I believe, John was around 5 or 6 when we were able to have someone be able to watch him, that knew him well enough to where, if a situation arose, they could go ahead and handle it. And we got away for a weekend, my wife and me, right? So, if you can imagine, 5, 6 years, it's a long time, and what have you. So we, so we were able to do that a little bit more, after, finding, some help and everything. And that's been something we've been very, fortunate, since then, is to have really, really good help, and, has allowed us to, even, take a trip out of the country. Right. And which early on, I would have said absolutely, won't happen. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I know not everybody, is fortunate, but you've got to, look throughout your community resources that you have available to you, and, and to get away. Right. You have to get away and everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a, I can't kind of promote that enough, because it is so important, and it just helps everyone, doesn't it? It just really helps. The other side of this is, of course, when you go away and you leave, you leave John in the care of someone else, is that when you first do that, is that you're like, you almost can't relax for that first time, because you're like, you're always, you're kind of worried about, like, something's going to happen, like, is he going to be okay, or So you have that anxiety kick in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, but that kind of starts to kind of like, well, for me, start to kind of like get less and less. And if I'm away with my wife and we have the babysitter, I'm like, everything's gonna be fine. We're just gonna enjoy our dinner out and wherever we're gonna go. And we haven't actually, one thing we haven't done, which I is have the like a babysitter or someone stay overnight at the home and us go away.
Yeah.
And I think that would actually be really nice. Trying to work that in somehow into our lives, because like I say, we just haven't done that. We haven't done
Yeah.
that for
Yeah.
now 14 years.
Yeah,
So
I would highly encourage, to try to work towards being able to do that.
mm,
It definitely is good to completely get away, for even if it's one or two overnight, stays. And
mm,
and one thing you may want to do is try it out, but stay someone very, very close to home and everything, to where
mm,
if a situation did arise, you could be there within, 20, 30 minutes or what have you. And
mm.
then just, from there, just kind of work it to where you go a little bit further, maybe a little bit longer, right?
Yeah.
But I think the key is finding someone, that understands your child well enough and knows what, the child's needs are and what have you, and that the child, is, likes being around that person, right?
Yeah.
And feel comfortable, right?
Yeah. That's absolutely right on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Wow. Okay. Um. So okay. Um. How how has John changed you, Tommy, as
Mm.
a guy, as a man, kind of dad now? How's he changed you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would have to say, but before John came along, I didn't have any patience. I just didn't, right? And one of the things that I've learned, and am still learning, and probably a long ways to go, is patience, right? Not everything is going to happen according to my schedule or when I think it should happen. It'll happen when it happens, right? So I've learned, some patience. The other thing I've learned is I just got to chill out sometimes and not get frustrated at John. One
Mm,
example is, when I'm feeding John, we have to go ahead and feed him, and all of his food is pureed because he hasn't learned really how to chew food. And sometimes, when you're feeding him, his mouth, some may dribble out and what have you. And so, there's been a couple of times, feeding John, and, I'll put the food in his mouth and he does it, normally, a few times, doesn't swallow it, right? And the
mm,
food comes out, and I'll get frustrated, and I might have a choice word here or there and everything, and then he's just looking back at me, and he's like, "You jackwagon, you're sitting here, talking to me, and I can't help it,
yeah.
it just kind of sets this perspective, that hey, chill out,
Mm.
and so that
Do you have to reset? I find. Do you reset yourself? Like
yes,
you have to kind of like catch yourself and be
yeah,
like, okay, there's my frustration kicking in. I can feel it, and I'm like, okay, I need to reset. I need to try and just let that go, and
yeah.
I've got to reset, and I got to do that quickly. That's how. That's and I. It's really hard.
Yeah, no, it definitely is hard, and I have found myself doing that several times. It could be during the day, but yes, you just get this frustration that builds up, and you want it done a certain way, and it's just not working out. And before you can, get some, a little bit of anger, you just gotta, pause and say, look, he can't help it, and just you have that quick reality check, and then you go back to, taking care of them, the way we should.
Yeah.
So.
And because because the episode I had on anger was kind of, I realized when I was doing that episode is my anger, my frustration was like, while it was actually, well, it was like because of what he had done, but actually it was, as it was about me, it was how I was viewing a situation and how I needed to react and how I needed to kind of internalize and kind of process it. So it's everyone has different ways of kind of going through those moments, don't they? Because it is such a challenging thing. And my sister actually had a really interesting, I talked to her about this after the episode of anger, and she said that one of the interesting points that, she said maybe you could talk about again, is because anger is more normalized with men than it is with women, right? And I was like, that's actually interesting, because there is a sense of, like, if a woman loses her shit, like, it's like, whoa, she's lost her shit, right? But if a man loses his shit, it's like, well, it's just a man losing his shit, right? There's that kind of normalization of a guy kind of like getting, of him getting frustrated, him getting angry, right? And so it's like, that's, again, that's kind of potentially a whole new podcast there, but anyway. Okay, if John has changed you, which he has, right? He has changed you. How has he impacted those around him?
Okay. Yeah. So John has always had a very positive impact on. He has come across many people. We have lots of different nannies and people in our lives and everything, and we're always being, told, how good, John makes them feel, because John always has a smile on his face. He's always willing to hug your neck and what have you. He just loves being around people. But there's one particular story, and this story happened when John was 9, and it's a story that I've told many times, and I have very few times in telling the story I've been able to tell it without shedding a tear. It's one of those that pulls on your heartstrings, but it's such a special story to me and my wife and to John. But he was at elementary school one day, and and there was a girl there on the playground, and she noticed that John was just kind of on the sidelines, not playing on all the various playground equipment. And she went home, to her parents that evening, and she told her mom. She says, "Mom," she says, "it's not really fair that John doesn't get to play, at recess. He just he's there in his wheelchair on the sidelines, and just he looks sad." And she, her mom told her, says, "Well, look, there's various types of playground equipment, and there's some that's made for wheelchairs, but the school just doesn't have any. It's probably because it's very expensive." And so that got Emma to thinking, and that evening, she went up to her room, and later she came down and she told her mom. She says, "Well, look," she says, "I want to help the school be able to get that playground equipment." So she gave her mother her weekly allowance was a couple of dollars or something like that, and her mother was absolutely touched and everything like that. And she told her, said, "Well, look, it's going to cost lots and lots of money to get that piece of equipment, And so what her mother did, your mother wanted to be supportive of her daughter, and so her mother helped her create one of these crowdsourcing websites. I think it was a GoFundMe page to help raise money, for this, playground equipment that would accommodate two different wheelchairs on it. So this fundraising campaign got started, and I'll just for sake of time, I'll kind of fast forward a little bit. But this 9-year-old girl raised $25,000.
That's just awesome.
Yeah, to be able to purchase that equipment, and to see how excited. So when the playground equipment got installed, there was the local television station, they wanted to do a news story on it, and her mother was speaking, and while her mother was speaking, the little girl was looking up at her mother, and she just had this big old smile on her face, that she was so proud that John and the rest of the kids in his classroom were going to be able to participate in recess, and so that right there, seeing how John has had impact on others, around him, and them wanting, my son and others to participate is just, it's something that just pulls at you. And so in summary, yeah, he's had a very, very positive effect on and these are young kids, 8 and 9, and those kids are going to take those good things that they've learned from that, and they're going to grow up with that. And so that's something that's really special for us.
That's awesome. Hey, it's such a beautiful story, isn't it? It's such a beautiful story, and I think it, like, the simplicity of how it starts off with that, the money she brought down, her pocket money, said, okay, she's like, is this enough, right? Is this gonna do anything? And it's like, but I find it's just amazing, because it's the fact that she's been like, oh, let's go back to that point. He's on the sideline. He's like, okay, there's someone over there who wants to be on this field, who wants to be playing with us, but can't, right? Yeah. That's inclusion, right? That is inclusion. Yeah. That's like, why can't he be over here? Like, that's the question that she's asked in her head. Is like, why can't he be over here? Yeah. Okay, yeah, he's in a wheelchair, but why can't he be over here? Like, it's such a simple question, right? Yeah. And okay, like, let's just try and make that happen. And so she's kind of taken those actual steps, and it's those things are so important. I like the last episode, which was about inclusion, right? And it's just like, yes, inclusion takes effort, and of course it takes money to kind of sometimes create these things and build the infrastructure for it to happen. Right. Not just for our kids, hey, it's like for all these kids to follow as well, right? So it's not just like a one-off thing. It's like, it's actually going to be used again and again and again and again. Yeah. So that's awesome. So the just a beautiful story, and like, it's who's not going to love that story? Who's not going to love that story? Thank you for sharing that, Tommy. That's great. So I want to talk about the. Oh, actually, hang on. What is something that you thought that he would not be able to do, but he can do now, or he's on the verge of kind of getting there, or something like that? What is something?
Yeah, so for us, it's I never thought that John would be able to walk and everything. So for many years, John was when he was small, we would carry him everywhere, right? And or we would, put him into, let's say, baby stroller. And, as John got bigger, we were able to get larger, strollers and stuff like that. But we always kept up his physical therapy and working with him. And it was probably about a year and a half ago, John really progressed and was able to take a couple of steps on his own, and then we kind of ramped up his physical therapy, and now he can walk from one side of the room to the other unassisted. Now his balance ain't great at all, but he if he knows something's over there, he can get up and he can walk to it, and that's something that probably 4 or 5 years ago, I said there's no way. I just think he's not going to be able to walk, but now in a lot of, I would say, most of the walking when we were helping him and assisting him, we would face John, hold his hands, and then we would walk backwards as he would walk forward, right? And that's how we navigated many different places. Now he had a walker, and he could walk with that, but that's also bulky, and going through different restaurants and what have you. He's bumping up against everybody, and so that's how we would walk him. And over the recent time, he's been able to do that. And so now when we go, out in public and everything, I'm able to hold hands with him side by side. We're both facing forward and walk. And so that is such a,
that's fantastic. Isn't it? That's awesome.
It's a great feeling, because it helps us, if you will, look more normal, typical, right, and what have you. Now he still doesn't have the best of balance and everything, and he's still bumping up, and when we're in restaurants and everything, and we get in there, I'm always looking, okay, what's the least difficult path to take, going in and going out, right? Sometimes it may be the longer way, but that's the way that I'm going to take, right?
Yeah. Oh, that is awesome, because that's a huge thing, right? That is like being able for him to be able to kind of get up on his own, of his own desire and his own need and his own want to kind of hop out of the chair and walk and be able to do that. Like, this is like for physically to be able to do that. Yeah. How did you feel when he first did that? When he first kind of got up out of his chair himself and walked?
It was a fantastic feeling. It was, I was so proud, of him, and so, we have friends and everything that'll post on social media. Hey, my son scored a touchdown, or they got something here. I'm like, hey, my son just walked across the room,
across the room.
And so just very, very super proud, of him, and he's worked so hard at it and everything, but super, super proud and everything. So
that's awesome, and all credit to you for doing this, because
it's credit to me, my wife, and all the physical therapists and everything like that, and we even so John's getting ready to be a senior in high school, and we're already in talks with, how are we going to get John to walk across the stage and everything.
Oh, that's all. I love this. I love this. This is.
Yeah, it's just, I get chills this thing.
I do. I got chills just now when you said this. I was like, this is like, because they are the moments, right? They are the moments that make the shit that we go through all worthwhile for us as dads, right? Yeah. Those little things, what little things little things that become such important things, right? That walking across the stage, that it is just monumental stuff. And I love it that you're in those discussions with with the high school about that, and the schools that he's with now to try and discuss that, because that's the key, right? Because that's the key to try and like open the doors and be like, okay, so how, like, how do we do this? It's not,
Yeah.
can we do this? Like, how do we do this? It's not
Yeah.
can, it's how. How do we make it happen? Yeah.
Yeah, so we're super excited about that, and this kind of related to that. Last Friday, I walked into our family room. It was kind of it was getting close to dinner time, and that day I worked from home and everything, and John was sitting there with my wife on the sofa and what have you, and all I did was I walked in there and I said, "Where would y'all like to go for dinner?" And I think, John has learned the word go. And, many times, he stays a lot at home because, he's here under our care and there's not a lot that he can do independent, out there. And so when he hears the word go, he gets excited. So they were sitting on the sofa and I walked in there. I said, where would y'all like to go for dinner? And he immediately stood up and came and got me and took me by the hand like he was ready to go, right? And so he likes the word go now, and
There it is. That's
to get
great.
out of the house, he gets excited.
That's so awesome. I love it. So it's like go is the word.
Yeah, go
It's
is the
the
word.
go word.
Yeah,
Go is the go word.
yeah.
Love it. So good. What um let's I want to go ask a kind of an interesting question here, which is we are along the journey, right? We are years along because there are a lot of dads, of course, who are at the beginning of that journey, right at the start of it. So if you could go back, what dad advice would you give to yourself if you could go back to day one?
Mm. Uh, you know, if go back to day one, I would say you've got to take one day at a time. That there are going to be things beyond your control that will happen when they happen, right? And they're not going to happen on my time, my wife's time. That they're just going to happen, if you will, on God's time. Whenever
Mm.
that happens, it's going to happen. You can't control it. And obviously there are certain things that you can do to maybe enhance it and come along. But everything is going to happen when it happens.
Mhm.
And the other thing I would say is when you one of the pieces of thing I heard when we were in the NICU is there was a family that we're still very close with. They said, "Hey Tommy, we've been seeing each other in the hallways, and their child was there for well over a year." And they said, "Hey, you probably need to look into these programs and everything. There's various types of respite and this and that and everything." And I kind of discounted it. And
Mm.
I'm like, no, we're going to be fine. We're going to get through this and what have you. And, my advice back to myself is, when you hear someone giving you some advice and you can see that they've got a couple of notches on their belt. They've been there. They've kind of been doing it for a couple of months. Listen to them,
Mm. I think it's
and
hard, isn't it? Because it's hard to kind of listen to. Because you think
yeah,
I don't need advice. You kind of almost like I was like I don't need advice. I don't need someone to tell me what to do. Right? For me that was how it was. I don't know for you, but like.
yeah, yeah. You got to listen to that,
Mm.
and then you have to go through and process that, and
Mm.
then it may be that some of that advice doesn't apply, right? But you
Mm.
can't
Mm.
just discount it and just kind of put it in the back of your head and everything. You've got to take that advice and everything
Mm.
like that. And then the last thing is take time for yourself and everything, and find someone, whether it's a family member, friends, whoever, get them trained and to where that they can take care of your child so that you can get some respite and everything.
Mm.
I wish that we would have did that sooner than later.
Mm.
But that would be advice that I would give to myself day one.
Fantastic. I love it. What does John love?
John loves to be around people. He loves to just be around people. He likes to sit next to you. He likes to hug on you. He likes to be on the go. He wakes up every day with a smile,
Mm,
and he just wants to someone to talk to him,
mm.
and someone to go
Acknowledge
throughout
him.
the
To
day,
acknowledge him.
to acknowledge him and go throughout the day and what have you.
Mm.
But yeah, he just loves to be around people, and he
Fantastic.
loves to eat, right? That child, we could, unless we know we got to stop feeding him, because he'll eat until he makes himself sick and
All
everything.
right,
So
right.
he loves to eat, right? He likes, and one thing that we've been extremely fortunate with is there is not yet one food we have found that child does not like. So we've been thoroughly blessed with that one.
Great. I love it. That's awesome. Food, yeah. What was something that made you laugh recently? That's right. Something that John did that made you laugh recently.
Yeah, so it was just that story that I was telling, just this past Friday night when I went in there, and I'm like, okay, where would y'all like to go for dinner? And he just
Oh, that
immediately stood up
fantastic.
and says, "Yep, I'm ready to
It's
go."
not,
And
I'm
so
gonna go. That's
yeah,
it. What a
so
great.
so that made me just laugh, and that was the most recent thing there. But he's always he loves to make facial reactions and everything, loves to smile and everything, sticks his tongue out, this really really big and everything. So yeah, he's always making me smile.
Awesome. So Tommy, I've got one last question here,
Okay.
which and this one is what what are 4 words that sum up your life as John's dad? What would you say those 4 words are?
I would say that the first word is proud. I'm
Mm,
very, very proud to be his dad. And, whenever I get to tell John's story and everything, I'm always, proud of what he's been able to accomplish and everything. And, and talk about those accomplishments and everything, and what he's currently working on. That's something I've
mm,
always I've never shied away from celebrating his accomplishments and what have you. The other is grateful. I'm extremely grateful for all the resources, the doctors and the friends and various things that have helped us get John where he is at today. His doctors, have just played such an instrumental role. Just grateful for all of that, and we would not be here not for his doctors, but our friends and everything. We have friends that they take a keen interest in John and what have you, and treat him like he's just a normal kid, and that that means the world to us.
mm,
The other is planner. Um, I feel that with John's special needs and everything, I'm always the planner, right? So if we're going somewhere, I'm always thinking, okay, well, is the restroom going to be have the right accessibility needs for us, right?
mm,
And if we're planning this trip, are we going to have some place that will have something on the menu that John will be able to eat. So
mm.
always the planner, for John. And then, the last one is worried. And what I mean by that is, there's going to come a point in time where, my wife and me, we're not physically able to take care of him, and he'll have to go into the care of somebody else. And the worrisome part is, are they going to be able to take care of him the way that he needs to be taken care of? Because, he can't communicate, and,
Mm.
you can put all you want down on paper and what have you, but when reality sets in, are they going to take care of him? So
Mm.
that's the worry, the long term,
Yeah.
for John and everything. His medical condition, there's no life expectancy, short, he's going to live a full life,
Mm.
should. And so who takes care of John and, long term and everything. So
Mm.
that's the worry part. But extremely proud and grateful, and you plan as much as you can, but then
Yeah.
there's still that worrisome part.
Yeah. Yeah. I can really empathize with that. That is, um, certainly worry and concern, and just like, unknown, um, how it's going to play out in years to come, because we're human, right? We're human. We want our kids to have a quality life,
Yeah.
when we're gone, right? We
Yeah.
want that to continue. And we when we're alive and we're walking this earth, we can help facilitate that, right? um and of course, like, the fear, um that I have is that when I'm gone, is that how do I kind of ensure that happens? And I can't ensure anything. All I can do is I can just try and pave the way, so that when the time comes that my time is up, then, like, is it I'm gonna I hope that things will kind of, be all right. And it's a genuine, fear, and I think that's just a genuine fear anyway as a parent, right? But I think it's like, I have another son, which is Joshua, right? And he's a couple of years younger than Jamie.
Hmm.
So, but I don't have that worry with him,
Yeah.
right? It's a like, I know he's just going to be, he'll be okay. He will
Mhm.
navigate his way through life.
Yeah.
So that's a very different. I have a very different concern and worry about Jamie.
Yeah.
Um, and that's very real. And again, it's just, sometimes it's talked about, and sometimes it's not talked about, especially as dads, right? Because we just think, well, like, let's keep it all kind of tucked in, and
Yeah.
um, so, Tommy, again, thank you for sharing your story, because, like, it's just, it is great, and I've loved hearing it. I've loved hearing your story, and I'm really sure that, like, those who listen in will also enjoy it. And there'll be pieces that be like, yeah, I can relate to that. I can relate to that, or I can learn from that. Um, and yeah, it's been awesome. And I, like, for the first, as the first guest on the show, congratulations.
Thank you for having me. Like I said earlier, I'm always, happy to share, our story with John, with others, in hopes of helping them. There may be, like you just said, a few things that you can relate to, and help you along. But always happy to share, and happy to be a guest on your podcast.
Fantastic. Well, I maybe, like, later on is actually, um, to get you kind of back on and do like a catch up, and
Yeah.
find out how things are going, because of course, because he goes into, you said he's going
He's going into his
into
senior year in high school, and
Yep.
so he's got that year, and then they have a special program here, is he'll actually be able to stay there, extra add on till he's 22, and
Right.
so we're gonna keep him there, and then after that we will search for, an adult day program, so that he can, stay involved, during the day. Give him something to do outside the home and everything like
Awesome.
that. But always, be happy to come back and give updates on John.
Fantastic. Well, you've set the bar very high, man. I'll tell you what, you've the bar's high. We're gonna have to try and
Yeah.
It's great. I love it. You've done really well, and I appreciate your honesty and openness with this. And so it's been fantastic, man. Awesome. I love it. We'll wrap it up here for the episode, and awesome. Can't thank you enough, mate.
All right.
Wonderful.
All right.
Wonderful.
Best of luck.
All right. Cool, man.
Take care.